Okay, welcome to the Office of Undergraduate Research Education Series. Today's session is Intro to the Office of Research Education, or RED, and Research Misconduct. And our speaker is Allison Lord. Today, it's a virtual event, so it's being recorded. So we ask everyone to mute yourself and turn off your camera for the best experience. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat feature, or you can unmute yourself when you're invited by the speaker. This is the QR code to the event evaluation. We would love everyone to fill that out, but our UROP and our SPUR scholars, in order to receive credit for attending this event, must fill out the event evaluation. I will put the link in the chat after we've started. And I wanted to let everyone know that the mission of the University of Utah Office of Undergraduate Research is to facilitate and promote undergraduate, student, faculty, collaborative research, and creative works in all disciplines throughout the University of Utah campus. In recognition that excellence requires diversity, we pursue this mission through equitable programming that promotes diverse representation and social justice. And we would like to acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. And today's speaker is Allison Lord. She's the Training and Development Coordinator for the Office of Research Education.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shelley. I appreciate it. So as Shelley mentioned, my name is Allison Lord. I'm Training and Development Coordinator. And essentially what I'm going to be sharing with you today are resources and things that we do through the Office of Research Education that might be of interest to you, that can kind of help you along your research journey as you go through that process. So starting out, and I'm going to use our acronym RED for research education. You'll see both on all of our materials and things like that. It's just a little shorter, so I'll be using that as I talk about our department today. But our mission and objectives, our mission is to provide comprehensive training and learning opportunities and resources for faculty, students, and staff engaged in responsible conduct of research at the University of Utah. And our objectives towards that mission are to offer up-to-date courses and seminars linked to the research enterprise, ensure that faculty, students, and staff develop the necessary skills to implement best practices for research, and to provide faculty, students, and staff with access to resources and tools to implement best practices for research. Everything that we do through our office is free of charge to anyone associated with the University of Utah. So if you see any classes that are of interest to you, you can sign up for free through our website since you're a University of Utah student. And essentially you just register through catalog, and I'll kind of show you some of that as we get into it here. But yeah, everything is free of charge to anyone associated with the university. Digging in a little bit more who we are in our office. We are a very small office. There are just 3 of us. So there's our director, Jesse Morris, myself, I am the training and development coordinator, as I've said a couple of times, and then my colleague, Elliot Free. He is training and communication coordinator of RED. So between the 3 of us, we run our entire office. So if you have questions come up and things like that, you can contact any of us, or you might hear from any of us because we're such a small office, we kind of tag team a lot of things. Things that might be of interest as far as getting information about things that we're doing and things that we're offering to the U. We do advertising through newsletters and flyers. We do one of these per semester, excluding summer semester. So I just have a couple of pictures here of our spring and fall newsletters from last year. We also will put out just like a standalone flyer that we try to hang in like main buildings on main campus, in addition to sending out through email of just our classes for that semester. We also started last spring a specific NSF newsletter. So NSF, if you're unfamiliar, is the National Science Foundation, and essentially our newsletter, our NSF newsletter is targeted towards funding opportunities and things specific to the NSF world. So we'll be putting that out as well. We also have a Twitter account and an Instagram account. So those handles are on this page. We have a few listservs. So if you do find that, hey, you want to be notified of like our newsletters and things like that, or upcoming classes, you can sign up for our listservs as well. That the way to sign up for that is on our website, which I will show you in just a little bit here. But we also have a Red podcast that has just kind of short little snippets of research information and things that might be of interest to you that you can find on any podcast platform. We're on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so you can find us through any of that as well. One of the main things that we offer through our department is our certificates. This is probably the top resource that undergraduate students might be interested in. So we have a slew of certificates, as you can see my list here. We have Responsible Conduct of Research certificate. We have one directed for faculty and staff, but we have a separate one for graduate and undergraduate students. We have a research mentoring certificate, which is open to anyone. Finance and budget management, again, open to anyone. Compliance and research activities is also open to anyone. And then these last two on here, we are in development with. We have a data management certificate that has been under revision in response to some new NIH policies. We are relaunching it next spring. So we are in process for that. And then we are also in process in creating a research development certificate as well. I'm going to focus mostly today on responsible conduct of research. So our trainings, there is definitely an increased need for these types of trainings, kind of nationwide. The NSF just recently came out with some new guidelines requiring more specific training in responsible and ethical conduct of research, as well as research mentoring. We cover case studies in our trainings. We do lots of information on high profile cases like this one that you can see here. So we make sure to talk about these types of situations in the hopes that preparing you ahead of time will make you more aware of if and when any situations of misconduct arise within your own experience, so that you can know how to handle that and what to do in case anything like that were to come up. So our RCR certificate is aimed at essentially anyone who is in a research setting. Participants will become familiar with best practices, proper procedures for conducting responsible conduct of research, whether you're in health sciences, social behavioral sciences, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Essentially any realm where you are doing research, this will be applicable. So at the end of this certificate, participants are able to articulate how federal, state regulations, professional standards, and university policies underscore the need for RCR or RECR in the research enterprise. So looking at these certificates in particular, on the left-hand side there, I have an infographic, and Shelley, if you can share that in the chat at this point, that would be great. So Shelley is going to share a file in the chat, which is this, this same infographic you can see here on the left, the RECR certificate for students. It's designed for undergraduate and or graduate students in any type of research setting. So essentially the format of this certificate is 5 total classes. There are 4 required and then 1 elective that you can choose. So this very first one is Foundations of Responsible Conduct of Research. I teach that one, and I teach it at least once, often twice a semester. So as you are taking that, you'll see me again. And then we have our Advanced Consideration of Criteria for IRB Approval of Research, getting published, responsible authorship and peer review, and then Introduction to Research Mentoring. So this 501, I believe Allison Maurer is the teacher for that. And then the 721 here, responsible authorship and peer review, is Ann Johnson. I may have that backwards, but those are kind of the 2 other teachers for those 2 classes. And then this Introduction to Research Mentoring is actually an asynchronous class that is managed by Dr. Rachel Hayes Harb. And so those are the main required classes. And then you can select any of these others as your 5th elective class for this certificate, based on your interest level or what's most applicable to you, and things like that. So we have quite a few offers there. And that document that Shelley just shared, like I said, is the same infographic, but those links are live, so they should take you right to our website so you can sign up for any of those that you're interested in taking. I know this is directed towards students, but we do also, just so you're aware, have a responsible and ethical conduct of research certificate directed towards faculty, scholars, and staff. It is very similar. There are just a couple of slight differences in the required classes, and then there's also an elective required for that as well. So there's just sort of a different format here, so you can kind of see the layout of these 4 required classes and then the electives. So moving on to our next certificate. And also I'm going to pause here for just a second. I tend to talk really fast. And so if you are having any questions come up, please feel free to put them in the chat. There are, I think, a little too many people for you to unmute yourselves today, but please feel free to type those in the chat and I will make sure to get to them either at the end, or if you just want to jot it down and ask me at the end, I'm totally fine with that. But I know I can go through this fairly quickly. I will also be sharing my slides with Shelley after this as well, so I'm sure she will be able to send those out as well afterwards. Okay, sorry, I'm going to get back on track now. So the next certificate I want to talk about is our research mentoring certificate. This is also open to anyone. So undergrad students, graduate students, faculty, staff, anyone associated with the University of Utah can get this certificate through RED. And I really want to highlight the importance of mentoring relationships within the research environment. Research mentors play critical roles in the development of emerging scholars. So this certificate is directed not just towards those who are mentoring, but also mentees, which most of you will probably be in that situation starting out, though not always. But it's a very reciprocal relationship, and it's really crucial to understand the responsibilities on both sides of that, right? It's a balancing of communication and and making sure that you have that good relationship. So our certificate of research mentoring is offered in 2 different formats. We have a cohort type format, which essentially just means you sign up once and it is all 6 of the classes kind of together in a set recurring format. So this information in this blurb was from last fall, but we are offering this research mentoring cohort again this coming fall. I believe it starts either at the very, I think end of September is when it starts, and it's every Friday for about 6 weeks, minus fall break, because I know that kind of falls in the middle of it this year. But Dr. Alexis Christensen is our instructor for the cohort. And then we also offer all 6 of these classes. The first one, the introduction, is asynchronous in both formats, but all of the rest of the 5 we offer, we are going to be offering twice in the fall semester. So Dr. Rachel Hayes-Harb will be teaching all 5 of those, as will Dr. Shannon Barrios. So whatever format works best for you, we try and make those available. So we have lots of opportunity coming this fall, essentially 3 different opportunities for you to get the certificate if it's something you're interested in. Like I said, research mentoring is really crucial. It's really crucial to understand how that relationship works and how those dynamics work and what your responsibilities as a mentee are, and not just what the mentor's responsibilities are. But all of our instructors for this are fantastic, and they do a really great job of looking at specific case studies and situations and talking through how to handle any mentoring issues that might come up. So that's kind of the second big one. I'm going to kind of speed through these next few because I think those first 2 are probably the most applicable. But if for any reason you're interested in any of these, you are welcome to take any of these classes as well. We have our finance and budget management in research. So this certificate will prepare you to understand and interpret financial and budgeting aspects of research and activities in research settings. It will promote understanding of fundamental aspects of financial management. So this is really heavily focused towards that side of research. We have our compliance and research activities certificate. This one is aimed toward learning appropriate methods of developing and preparing regulatory forms, documentation, meeting expectations of compliance, FDA audit processes. So this is really that compliance documentation side of research. So if that's the area you're looking at getting into, this might be of interest to you. And then in development, I mentioned this, we have research development certificate. This says spring 2023. We actually had to put that off for a year because of a few different things that came up, but we do have a working group, and we are working on setting these classes up. So in the future, if that's something you're interested in, you're welcome to take a look at that as well. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment so I can show you our RED website. I'm going to stop my sharing for a second, and then I'm going to go over to our website, and hopefully y'all can see that. So our RED website is just education.research.edu. When you go to our website, this is what our homepage currently looks like. We are revamping some things on here. But it is it has already been updated quite a bit. So as you scroll down here, a couple things I want to show you. I'm going to scroll right down to the middle of this page, and right here on the left-hand side is our red listservs. I mentioned those a few slides ago. So if you click on that, these are the different listservs you can join to get information about our upcoming classes, our newsletters, anything that is kind of going through our department that might be of interest to people. We send it out through these. So you can just click to subscribe to any of these that you're interested in joining. And that's a great way to get some information directly to your email. And then you don't have to do like extra clicks and things like that to get that information. So we also have links to our podcast and resources and things like that. I'm going to scroll back up here and go to all of our red classes. This page will show all of the classes that we do offer. So you just can take a look at any of these, or if it's a situation where you're going through that certificate, you can find them all here. I'm going to go straight down here to the student certificate section, just to kind of show you how you would sign up for a class if you're interested in that. So the first one you would take would be this Foundations of Responsible Conduct of Research class. So as you click on that, it gives you a bit more information about the format of the class, the time frame, what it looks like, what the expectations are, and what the objectives are. As I mentioned, I am the instructor on this class. So if you take it, you'll get to see me again, which may be good, maybe not. But typically our synchronous classes are around 1 to 2 hours of work. The format for this one specifically, which I think is probably the most applicable to you all as students, there are some readings to complete beforehand. We have a 1-hour Zoom session, and then there's a short assignment on the other end as well. And then you'll have full credit for that class. Many of our classes are similar. Some of them have just readings, some of them don't have assignments. It just kind of depends on the instructors and what they would like. So if you were to go to register, it's going to take you to our red catalog here. So what I want to show you here is a couple of things. So you're wanting to look for the number, the class number, to make sure it lines up with the class you're wanting to take. And then down here, it will tell you the dates. So this one was 2022. This was last year. So we actually need to pull that one, but typically it won't show up if it's past the date, but we are offering this class twice in the fall. So once on November 8th, and then we're offering it on September 21st as well. If for some reason, right now we have most of our fall classes scheduled, but if you were to go in, if you had gone in a few weeks ago, we wouldn't have necessarily had these dates settled yet. So you would see this TBA session. So if you're looking at a class and it doesn't have a date on it and it just says self-paced, but it's one that is advertised as synchronous, it is because we don't have a specific date scheduled. So what you would do for that is just enroll in this TBA session. And then as soon as we have a date scheduled, we will put you into that date and notify you. And if that date doesn't work, we'll pop you back into this TBA session for then the next session that we have scheduled. So that's sort of just a holding place. If you see one come up and you're like, I really want to take that, but these dates don't work or whatever, we'll pop you into the next available session and let you know. But yeah. So if you were interested in taking this, you can just enroll by clicking the enroll now. You put in your unit and all of that, and that would be how you sign up for one of our classes. I'm going to go back here and show you one other thing on our website. So on the right-hand side, you can click and it will bring out another menu here. And I just want to show you our certificate of completion program page. So this part can be a little bit tricky. It's just a logistics thing that has to do with the way that Catalog and Canvas talk and don't talk to each other, unfortunately. So if you are interested in getting this certificate that I keep talking about, there are a couple of things you need to do in order to get that certificate. So as I mentioned, you take those 5 classes, the 4 required and then 1 elective. But also, in order to register for the certificate itself, there is this separate enrollment. So this enrollment here is specifically for that certificate. As you get into that, essentially what you'll do is upload a completion for each of those classes that's required, as well as the elective. And then once that's done, you can notify our office and we'll mark everything that we need to in Canvas in order for Catalog to generate your certificate for that entire program. And I know I'm going through this quickly, so like I said, if there are questions, and if you have questions come up in the future that, like today, this is a lot, kind of a fire hose of information, and you're like, I cannot remember where to go for that, feel free to email me, contact me. I am happy to walk you through it. Either just instructions through an email, or I'm happy to hop on a Zoom and kind of walk you through any questions that you have as well. So those are kind of the main things that I wanted to show you on our website. So back over here on my slides, I am to the portion where I'm going to cover some information on some questions that were submitted beforehand that Shelley was great to send me a week or 2 ago. So I included the ones that I had, but then I will also leave some time at the end for any additional questions that you might have. So I'm going to kind of tackle these in different sections here. So the first couple of questions that I have here are, when did research misconduct first become a problem? And then how do we report misconduct to the university? Both really fantastic questions. So looking at that first question, so I kind of want to look at, actually, these are a little bit out of order. I'm going to go to this one first and then I'll go back. Looking at kind of the history of research misconduct. In 1989, we got the first notice on RCR instructions. So this required any training grant applications to include a report of responsible conduct of research instructional activities. So that was kind of when it was very first put into place within funding opportunities, where they were requiring some sort of RCR instruction. Then in 1994, an RCR instruction plan was required in training grants. So grants without a plan at that point would be returned. It established minimum requirements. And then in 2000, the Office of Research Integrity, that would be at the federal level, issued a policy on RCR instruction for all research staff. And then that was suspended. And then they came up with a federal-wide definition of research misconduct to kind of narrow it in a little bit more. So the most current policy on training in responsible conduct of research from the NIH perspective, or the National Institute of Health perspective, came out in 2009. And then it was updated again just in February of 2022. So just about a year and a half ago, it was updated again. There are quite a few topics that the NIH requires in their trainings, but our certificate covers all of those topics. So that was what guided our development of our RCR certificate. And I go over a lot of this in more depth in the foundations class as well. But yeah, so through the NIH, They define responsible conduct of research as the practice of scientific investigation with integrity. It involves awareness and application of established professional norms and ethical principles in the performance of all activities related to scientific research. So that's kind of the NIH side. The NSF has been a bit more vague as far as requirements for RCR or RECR. You'll see those kind of used interchangeably. They just stand for responsible conduct of research or responsible and ethical conduct of research. So they're very much the same idea. But yeah, the NSF just came out, like I said, with some slightly more targeted requirements for specific training in RECR and research mentoring as well. So likely in the coming years, they're going to get more specific like the NIH has, but we're kind of seeing that first step towards that in the NSF realm right now. And then as far as resources here at the University of Utah for reporting misconduct, if you were to have anything like that come up, the place to go is the Office of Research Integrity and Compliance. We have 3 research integrity officers. So we have Dr. Aaron Rothwell, Dr. Karen Frost, and then Zachary Mitchell. They are our RIOs. They are the ones who will get any reports of misconduct. They will take a closer look at them, investigate, and decide ultimately whether it needs to be further investigated and whether action needs to be taken or not. So you can email them directly. You can also contact them through their website at www.integrity.research.utah.edu. And really important to note, any student, faculty, staff, or any other person may make a complaint of misconduct. So if you're aware of something, you are welcome to report it as long as it's done in good faith. So you can report directly to their office and they will work with you, and oftentimes they may have questions for you, they may not. It just kind of depends on the situation. But if you are concerned about reporting directly to them, there is also an option for anonymous reporting. So if you are uncomfortable going directly to that office, you can report any misconduct through www.ethicspoint.com. From there, you would type in University of Utah, select it, review the categories available for reporting, and then go ahead and make your report, submit. Those reports go directly to the individuals on the past slide as well. So they will handle it the same way they would if it were a direct report. They just won't be able to keep you informed. So either way, they are getting the information and they will investigate and determine whether it needs to be escalated further and investigated further or not. Okay, so those were kind of those first 2 questions. Next, I want to talk about these next 3. So the first question here, how common is research misconduct and what are ways we can prevent research misconduct? As far as how common it is, it's not super common, but it's more common than you would like to think, if that kind of makes sense. There are part of what I like to do, I think I already mentioned this in the classes that I teach, is look at case studies. And some of the case studies that I look at within my class are things that you think, oh my gosh, would people really do this? And unfortunately, yes, they do. So there are definitely gray lines, and there's gray area in things can creep up really quickly. And if you're not aware of really the specific definitions of research misconduct, it can be hard to spot those things if you're not aware of them. So as far as ways to prevent research misconduct, the really biggest thing that I can encourage is for you to do these trainings and get that specific information on things to watch for and what the definition of misconduct is on a federal level, and what to just kind of be aware of and have in the back of your head. We do these as prevention. We prefer not to do them as remediation, right? Prevention is so far and above remediation in all ways. So I think just having that knowledge and having these trainings, having this information goes a long way towards preventing research misconduct. As far as the next question, what forms of misconduct beyond plagiarism and falsification should I be aware of as someone whose entire work is coding? Again, a great question. I will be the first to admit I am not familiar with coding at that type of level. However, on a broad level, I will go to my next slide for just a second. When we're talking about federal research misconduct, the policy is FFP. So you did name both of those, whoever did ask that question, through the falsification and plagiarism, but there's also fabrication. So fabrication is making up of data, results, or reporting them. Falsification is manipulating your materials, your results, omitting or changing things, you're manipulating your processes or equipment so that your research is not accurately represented. So an example of what could be considered falsification is if it's a significant departure from an accepted practice within your discipline. So the example I like to use is omitting outliers. If that's an accepted practice, it wouldn't necessarily be falsification. If it's not an accepted practice and you still omit outliers, then that could be considered falsification under the federal research misconduct policy definition. And then there's also plagiarism, which is the appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving them credit. As far as on a broader level, looking at those things applied to your own discipline, I would encourage you to have a conversation with your faculty advisors and people who, or your people within your lab. Things that's kind of where those mentoring relationships come in, and you can have those more specific discussions that of what to watch for within your specific discipline. So hopefully, I know that didn't quite answer that question, but that would be my encouragement as far as where to go for more specific information on that. And then the next question, how do you project the use of AI tools will create complications within the realm of research misconduct? Yeah, so this is a great question. As we all know, AI is having, I mean, it's coming really to the forefront in a lot of areas. We actually at RED, I don't have a specific answer for you on this, but we are in development for a class specifically regarding the topic of AI in research and how you can effectively use it and not overuse it or get into kind of those sticky situations. So we are in development on that. And I would encourage you to, if this was your question or if you're interested in how that kind of is going to play out, keep an eye on our website for that class to come up, because we are working on that. That question has come up a few times within the last just like 4 or 5 months. So we are working on some more specific answers for you on that. And then kind of these last 2 questions that I chunked together. What are the most important things for proper lab conduct? As far as that goes, I would defer at a broad level from my own information to general professional behavior. We do have classes specific to lab work and expectations and things like that. So we do have experts within those types of fields that can address this a little bit better than I personally can. But I would err on the side of professional behavior. And again, just sort of that awareness of expectations. Communication is so, so important in any type of relationship, really, but especially within a research environment. I was just in a session that we were offering through RED, and it was taught by myself and one of our research mentoring instructors, and she shared that within her own lab, she will often share an idea that she is intending it to be the start of a conversation of how to handle certain situations or how to go about doing something. And oftentimes her mentees take it as a directive and this is what I'm supposed to do. So she shared that she has had to learn how to indicate that those are open conversations and not directives. So that really just illustrates the importance of establishing good communication within any type of lab or research setting. And really, our research mentoring classes are fantastic with ideas of how to go about doing that and how to approach those things. Because I know, especially as an undergrad student, going into that kind of situation could definitely be overwhelming. So I think a lot of the classes we offer will give you some excellent tools and resources in order to tackle those types of situations. But really the biggest thing I think is communication and then professionalism. And then that last question on there, what is the most common resource you see UROP scholars using through the Office of Research Education? I would say our Foundations of Responsible Conduct of Research class specifically. I see a lot of UROP scholars taking that. And then our RCR certificate that I talked a lot about, those are probably the top two. And then right below that would be the research mentoring. I think those are kind of the most applicable, most helpful for what y'all are needing at this point in your educational careers. Okay, hopefully I covered all of those questions all right. I would love to open it up now for any additional questions that you might have. I know I've gone through a lot of information today. So if you have any additional questions, I am happy to take those now, and you are welcome to either unmute yourself or pop it in the chat. I'm happy either way. When asked how a student has dealt with adversity, is there a solution that appeals to conduct? Paulina, do you mind unmuting for just a second and kind of clarifying that question for me?
Yes, it's something that shows that you do understand conduct well and that you are going to provide something well established for the environment that, like, let's say in a hiring process.
Okay.
And so that's my question, that, oh, this student has dealt with adversity and they follow conduct so well, you don't have to train them in this area.
I see. Yeah. So as far as that goes, I always err on assuming people aren't aware. As far as these trainings, I will tell you when I'm talking about FFP specifically, that federal definition of misconduct, when I first started teaching these classes, I kind of glossed over the plagiarism aspect because from my own specific background, I was very familiar with plagiarism. growing up and through the US educational system, I was super familiar with what plagiarism is and how to tackle that. However, it was a really great learning experience for me partway into these classes where I realized not everyone has that same background. And so from our perspective at Red, we offer these trainings to make sure that people have that information instead of just assuming. I think that's where things can go awry, is assuming that there has been prior training or background knowledge that is not necessarily there all the time. I don't know if that really answered your question.
I'll go the plagiarism route. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Annie, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for presenting to our undergraduate researchers with SPUR and Europe. We love collaborating with the VPR's office, so we are always so excited when you all want to collaborate more. My question for you is more specific along the lines of, because on the one hand, I think, different universities, so our undergraduate researchers in SPUR, many of them might come from other institutions. And so then I guess maybe just so that they can understand, because they're here at the University of Utah, working with faculty at the U, is that what is a relationship between student affairs when behavioral misconduct happens there, what gets channeled there versus what the VPR kind of hangs on to before it becomes, student affairs? Because usually that kind of route, it's probably going to go towards committees, hearings, and it could actually lead students. Yeah. So I was wondering if you could maybe speak a little bit about that relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, it gets into the kind of nuance of research misconduct specifically versus unprofessional behavior, right? So right now, that federal definition that I kind of briefly mentioned, doesn't include anything about unprofessional behavior like harassment or anything of that nature. So things within that realm typically are going to go through HR and student affairs and things like that. And right now it's a little bit siloed as far as that goes. So those types of things are going to go through those channels. If it's something involving plagiarism and falsification, fabrication, anything of that nature, that's where it's going to funnel towards VPR and then the Office of Research Integrity. So yeah, right now it's very much sort of split between those two. And it's really based on that federal policy.
So can I just ask a clarifying question? So student, or, I'm just saying students know that faculty also can do misconduct too, but I'm just, because these are mostly students here. Is that like, say a student plagiarizes a paper, the faculty paper or something like that, misrepresents something. Right now, my understanding is it's usually educational first, right? Trying to mitigate future repetition of behaviors. But what happens if it is egregious, where it's like it got published in a peer-reviewed journal, and then, and that actually for faculty, once stuff like that is going in the public realm, like what happens then?
Yeah. So I will be the first to say I'm not an expert in that, since that's not my specific department, but on a more broad level, I'm happy to talk about that as far as potential consequences. So as you mentioned, Annie, like if it's a plagiarism, if it's really egregious, and whether it's a student or faculty, if it's something that is really bad and it was published and we find out later that it was plagiarized, consequences can be being expelled, kicked out of your program, loss of any past authorship and things like that. And then if it's not as severe, if it's not quite as egregious, like you said, it does go towards the educational realm. And that is something that we do through our department as well. In concert with the VPR, they have reached out. I mean, they reach out to us to do those trainings for any departments or individuals or anything like that that need that additional kind of re-up of information as kind of a slap on the wrist kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
like I mentioned, we really like to do it as prevention rather than remediation.
That's great.
But that is a step that is definitely used quite a bit as well, depending on the
That's great.
circumstance.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. I just wanted to ask that question, and no, students, that hopefully nothing egregious happens in your careers to you, or to, that you may accidentally, unwillingly do, just, yeah. So let's just, fingers crossed. That's why we're having you get educated on this stuff. And that's so important. And I think our students can also be like good, ambassadors of these educational opportunities, because now they know about some of the fundamentals. But if they're seeing something that may be like, raising red flags, they can send folks to this training. I'm going to turn my camera off in case if there's other students, not other students, I'm not a student, but if there's students who have questions. Thank you. Thank you so much,
No,
Allison.
absolutely. Thank you, Annie. That was some great dialogue there. I appreciate your questions. And yeah, hopefully this type of prevention really does go a long way. As Annie was saying, if you are seeing something, even if you're not directly involved, but you see something that you're like, that's a red flag, that seems very questionable, it's always best to err on the side of go ahead and make a report. Like I said, as long as it's in good faith. If you're just like, oh, I just want to report everything, probably not the best idea. But in good faith, if you see a red flag, go ahead and report it, because the smallest thing that will happen is our RIOs will investigate and see that there's nothing and let you know, how they determined that. Or if it is something, they will be able to investigate further. So really, it's kind of one of those, this is very cheesy, but like, if you see something, say something. It really is important for you to have that knowledge, so that if you do see something, you know where to go and how to handle that, and essentially who to hand it over to as well.
Thanks everybody for attending today's education series. Here's a reminder, I just put the link in the chat, and here's a QR code for the evaluation. Europe and Spur scholars need to fill that out to get credit. And we just want to remind everybody about the Office of Undergraduate Research. We're at our.utah.edu, and you can email us at our@utah.edu. So thank you very much, Allison, Lord. We truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you, like I said, if you think of any other questions, feel free to email me. I'm just allison.lord@utah.edu. So 1L in Allison.